Welcome. I'm Michelle Renee Hiatt of American Quilter Society, and welcome to episode 3. In episode 3, we are going to put the star points on our trapezoids to prepare for the Hunter Star block. Now we're going to do this with a strip piecing method that is really easy. You're not going to believe how easy it is. And we're going to cut them then apart using the Rapid Fire Hunter Star. You can find these instructions in the pattern that is downloadable. You'll find that link in the description below, and we are going to be following along on pages 2 and 3. Now first, we want to take our background width of fabric strips, and I like to cut them in half. You could use the full width of fabric strip, but I found that during pressing, they become a little unwieldy. So I'm just cutting them apart so that I now have 2 half width of fabric strips. And you're going to need 2 half width of fabric strips for each of the fabrics that you have in your half width of your half yards. So we have 12 trapezoids from each of our half yard fabrics, and 6 are going to be applied to each of our strips, our half width of fabric strips. Now, to start sewing, we want to make sure that we come down 2 1/4 inches. Now, using math, I know that if I fold this over, I know that that's going to take me down the 2 1/4 inches, as this strip is 2 1/4 inches wide. So I'm going to place my first strip down below that 2 1/4 inch spacing. All right, I'm going to take this to my machine. Let me put my glasses on, and I'm going to place it under my foot. I'm going to bring my foot down, and I'm going to start stitching right at the beginning of the strip, lining up that trapezoid. Now you want to make sure that your trapezoid is down and out, all right, so that the pointy part of your trapezoid is what's going to go under the sewing machine first. I'm going to go ahead and stitch. When I get to the end, I'm going to pick up my next trapezoid. I'm going to turn it so that the point of the trapezoid is up, and I'm making sure I'm spacing them about 1/4 inch. There's plenty of room. You could go a little wider if you want. You don't want to butt it right up against the last one, because then it's going to be too tight to cut apart. All right, I'm just going to continue stitching, and I'm placing 6 of these on each strip set. So again, I'm lining this up 1/4 inch down and stitching. You're lining up those edges, and you have plenty of little extra wiggle room here. So don't get too stressed about getting them exactly 1/4 inch apart. All right, this is my number 5. Making sure that's nice and lined up, stitching through. And then here's my last one, and you can see I have plenty of room here left. I'm going to go ahead and stitch, and then I'm going to stitch it to the end, and then I would start my next strip piece, remembering to come down, you know, that 2 1/2 inches, and going ahead and starting with my next series of trapezoids. So you're going to repeat that with all of your trapezoids and strips, and now that I've sewn this, I'm going to take this over and press it. All right, so now I have laid out my trapezoid and strip neatly on my mat. I'm going to use the Rowenta iron to press it. Now you want to set your seam, which will allow your threads to fall down into your material and will set and lock in that seam. So it really just drops that seam. I'm going to go ahead and do some finger pressing here, because you don't want to ever take the iron and shove your fabric, especially when you're working with exposed bias like we have on the end of these trapezoids. Now I'm going to give it an initial press. And you can see I'm not shoving, I'm just kind of moving along the fabric. And now to set that with a really nice seam, I'm going to take the Faultless Magic spray I'm using this time, and you can see it nicely mist the fabric. And I'm just going to go over it until it dries. And that's going to give me a nice crisp seam. And it's going to give me a little added body to my background strip here, which is going to become my star points. Since I'm going to have to cut them with a bias cut, I want to make sure that they are nice and strong before I cut them apart. Next, we're going to subcut these. So we've pressed all of our trapezoids away from our background strips, and now we're going to use the Rapid Fire Hunter Star to do our subcuts. We are going to take the ruler and line up that common diagonal line with the outside of our strip. I'm going to pull it back, and this is the right-handed. I'll repeat this for the lefty. You're going to pull it back so that the ruler is lined up with the top of your trapezoid. And then we're going to cut them apart. You can leave all this extra on the bottom for now. That'll be cut later. And I'm just going to make my way up this strip. So I'm lining it up with the common diagonal with the outside of the strip, lining up my ruler with the top of the trapezoid and cutting them apart. Just making my way up. Lining up that outside edge of the strip with the common diagonal, and then my trapezoid with the edge of the ruler, and cutting. Let me bring this a little closer, and lining up that outside edge with the common diagonal and the bottom of my trapezoid with the top of the ruler. All right, the lefties, you're going to do similar, except for you are going to have your strip go horizontal. All right, I'm going to, the lineup is exactly the same. The common diagonal is going to go ahead and lay down on the opposite side of the strip that has the trapezoids. I'm going to move it over so that it hits the bottom of that trapezoid while keeping this common diagonal line on the edge of my strip. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut. And then I'm going to work my way down the strip, lining it up. And this is going to be creating our diamond points. Line up the bottom of that strip. Line up the ruler with the bottom of the trapezoid and trim. And you should have 12 of each of the fabrics that you used in the quilt. So from your half yards, you had 11 fabrics, and you have 12 trapezoids from each of your fabrics. Next, we're going to use these with the remaining strips to put the star point on the other side of the trapezoid. So next, we're going to use up the remainder of our background fabrics by applying our pieced trapezoids onto them. We have 22 half-width of fabric strips left, and we have 12 of each of our 11 fabrics that we have trapezoids. So this time, we're going to go ahead and start at the very edge. What we want to do is make sure that we end before the last 2¼ inches. So what I like to do is I fold over the edge, the end of the fabric, similar to how I folded it at the beginning of the last round, and just put a pin in it to make sure that I don't sew beyond this point. We had plenty of extra the first round, so I'm pretty sure I'll have plenty the second round, but it always helps to make sure that you take steps to ensure that you are setting yourself up for success. We're going to take our pieced trapezoids, and this time we're going to place them up and away. So the last time when we pieced them, we had them coming down towards us. This time they should be up and away from you when you sew. It's going to become a little bit like handling an octopus at this point, but I promise you it's worth it. Now, I like to start, you could go all the way to the edge here. I like to come in about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to place my first trapezoid just about 1/4 inch from the top. I'm going to come over here and stitch, making sure I'm lining up that edge of the trapezoid with the edge of my strip and keeping that nice and straight as I stitch. My nice 1/4 inch. Once again, I'm going to make sure that I'm leaving about 1/4 inch between them. Doesn't have to be exact. I would just lean towards giving yourself a little more than 1/4 inch versus less than 1/4 inch. And the reason for that is when we cut them apart, we want to make sure that we have enough room to do the proper cutting. All right. Ooh. And we're going to place 6 again on each strip. So this is my 5th one. And you'll see I have plenty of room left to get that 6th one on. This one has the edge of that strip, so it's a little more unwieldy than the other ones. All right. And you might feel like trying to fit that another trapezoid in, a 7th trapezoid, but 1, you don't need to, and 2, it really won't make it. You could try, but it won't. All right, so I just stitch on through, and then I go ahead and I'm going to start my next one and go ahead and continue through the remainder of my trapezoid. So you're going to stitch 12, 6 per strip, onto the remaining strips. So you're going to go through all 11 fabrics, and all 12 trapezoids are going to get a diamond on the other side. All right, as we finish this last strip, just going to stitch on through. And next, we're going to take these to the ironing board to iron. All right, so this next step is probably the most challenging in the quilt. We're going to have to press towards our star strip, and sometimes it's a little finicky. So we're going to set our seam like we did with the last round, and you're going to want to finger press it. So we're just going to come in and gently finger press it. It really wants to go the other way, so you're going to have to coax it. And the reason we're doing this is so that our seams will nest later. I find that it helps giving a little hit of mist from Faultless Magic Spray will help coax it into behaving. And then we're going to come in and we're just pressing. Remember, you're not shoving. You don't want to stretch your trapezoids nor the star points. And we're just going to press until it's nice and dry. It's the one thing whenever you're using an alternate starch, you always want to make sure that you press until it is dry. All right, and we're going to repeat this with all of our strips. So as I stated earlier, it's a little bit like working with an octopus at this point, but I find that if I Just shake it a little bit and kind of swoop it in. They lay pretty flat. All right, and then again, I'm just going to continue through all of my 22 strips with my 6 trapezoids of all 11 fabrics. Just working my way through it step by step. Little Mr. Faultless Magic Spray. I'm just going to continue working my way through all of my strip sets. Next, we're going to cut these apart, similar to the way we cut round 1. I'm going to take the Rapid Fire Hunter Star, I'm going to find that common diagonal line, and I'm going to place it on the outside of my strip set, so the side that's not sewn, and I'm going to back it up until I hit the top so that my ruler's top hits the edge of the trapezoid. Making sure you're keeping that nice and lined up, as these are going to be your star points, and cutting. So as a lefty, I'm going to continue making my way up the strip set, keeping that common diagonal line lined up on that outside edge, and lining up the edge of the ruler with the trapezoid and cutting. Let me get these 3 out of the way. I'll put them on my plate. I'll move this closer. You should always try and cut where you can see well. So many of us, I feel like we try and continue trimming even though it's out of reach. All right, I'm going to line up that common diagonal line and the edge with my trapezoid and cut apart, and then continue making my way up. All right, all the way there to the edge, and trim. Next, I'm going to show you the right-hander method. So again, you got to kind of swoop these onto your mat, just like we did our ironing mat. Kind of pet them out. Now I'm going to line up the common diagonal line, this is righties, with the bottom of my strip, and making sure the edge lines up with the trapezoid. And I'm going to cut. And then make my way across the strip, lining up the bottom of that strip with the common diagonal, across the strip. Pick these up, get them out of the way. A little futzing. Line on the bottom, making my way across. And you're going to repeat this for all 12 trapezoids of all 11 fabrics. That wraps up episode 3. Next episode, we're going to trim down these trapezoids and attach them to our half square triangles to put our blocks together.